Hello, welcome back to GMT. I'm Geetha Gurumurthy. Now, it is International Women's Day, and here at the BBC, we're looking at issues affecting girls and women across the world. Here's a question for you. Do you associate having a career more strongly with men or with women? You can find out by using a method known as the implicit association test. It was developed in the United States, and it can be used to check for hidden bias. Well, more than 1 million people have taken the gender-specific test online, and so can you. Words linked to career and family are flashed up on a screen, and participants must instantly associate them with gender. The test creators say 75% of male participants equate men with work and women with family. But this, and this is interesting, 80% of women display the same stereotype. Well, how this influences our actions and potentially leads to bias against women in the workplace is up for debate, but it certainly raises some interesting questions. Here to help answer them is the organisational psychologist Tinu Cornish. She provides unconscious bias training to universities. Tinu, thanks for coming in. How widespread is the problem, do you think? And what just tell us the nature of the problem?
Well, I think it's pretty widespread, and what it means is that if you have a CV and you give it to half your hirers as though it came from a male, and then exactly the CV to half the hirers as though it was a female, not only will the male hirers rate that CV more highly than when it came from a woman, the female hirers will do exactly the same. So you can't assume just by having a woman on the interview panel that actually you're going to get a fairer outcome.
So having women in senior management jobs, on boards of companies, senior positions in universities where you're working doesn't necessarily solve the problem?
Especially if they are the solo or the one and only. There's a lot of pressure when you're in that position, and it means that anyone else who's coming behind you could reflect on you, so they really have to be seen as excellent.
Now, do we know why this is?
Well, it's because part of our brains instantly categorises people, and we're not only looking for people who are like us, we're more likely to trust people who are like us, we're also looking for, you know, who are the higher status people, who are the people who are normally associated with those roles or jobs. And so there's a really strong association between think leader, think male. And many of us unconsciously are also making that association as well. So we don't really see women as being naturally in leadership positions.
But is that despite, for example, you know, in Britain we've got our second female Prime Minister, in the US we had Hillary Clinton running for president. I mean, we are actually seeing women come to the top in every field across the world, aren't we? It's astonishing that other women, at least, are still got these stereotypes, if that's what's happening.
Well, often they're often quite exceptional women, and one thing we know about role models is they need to be realistic. You need to be able to think, you know, actually this is a woman like me, she's ordinary, obviously she's good at her job, but she hasn't had to be a superwoman or extraordinary to actually get where she is.
So that's interesting. So seeing these very high-flying CEOs who also have lots of children, that doesn't necessarily equate to your average office worker.
No, exactly. And also it's a numbers game. So the more often you see women in position as role models, the stronger it's going to have that impact on you.
What do you do then, once you've uncovered this? What do you do to change people's behaviour?
So one of the things is to really help them to understand why we need to stick to very objective practices when we're undergoing interview. Because otherwise, if you're just making an easy decision on your gut or whether this person is going to fit in, then your unconscious bias is likely to be in the driving seat. The more you have to objectively compare the specific talents and experience of that individual to the person's specification, the more likely you're going to be able to be in conscious control.
But how do we sort of get a bit over the subjective decisions, for example, that we all make about who is the most competent, who is the most efficient, who has got the best leadership skills? Because women might have a different delivery, a different style that people just think is not leadership appropriate.
I think that's a really good point. So actually thinking about, well, what do we mean by good leadership in our organisations and how we expect people to demonstrate that, and thinking of the type of leadership that we really want in our modern day organisations and different ways of demonstrating that before the interview, so that you are primed and ready to see people who are different as representing good leaders, would be one way forward.
This also presumably applies to race and to the other factors that we know are there in the workplace.
Exactly. So, you know, it's think leader, think white male, for example. And similarly, we have difficulty in our unconscious seeing people of colour or people who are different in a variety of ways in our leadership roles.
Sounds like there's still quite a long way to go before we get what you and others are working for. Thanks very much indeed. Good of you to come in.